So hi everybody, I'm Victoria and I'm from Yellow Door in Southampton. Some of you may have heard of us, some of you may not have, but I will run through that with you. So the point of today is to basically raise awareness of what child to parent violence is and the kind of impacts of that. So we're going to be sort of touching on the surface of it really, because we've got roughly around an hour, and also introduce you to sort of Yellow Door and what we do and the support available. So yeah, pretty much just summarising again what I've said, an introduction to CAPVA, which is Child and Adolescent Parent Violence and Abuse. A little look at what the impact on family members are, and looking at our Building Respectful Families course, which is a relatively new programme that we've been running in Southampton for about near enough a year. So we're on our third course currently, and it's specifically for families where the child or adolescent is acting abusively in the home. So it's been quite a popular programme. We've had quite a lot of referrals for it because it really is quite a huge issue, particularly in Southampton, and it has been for quite some time. So who are we then? So who are Yellow Door? So Yellow Door are a charity. We operate in Southampton, but also just outside of Southampton for some of our services. And the reason that we're there is to help prevent and respond to domestic and sexual abuse. As part of that, we offer a range of services. So that includes therapy and counselling, trauma-based work. We've got a service that goes into local colleges, schools and universities to raise awareness of what healthy relationships are. Sorry, this is on thingy, I can't stop it from automatically going. You've got a domestic abuse team, which is where I'm from. So our work is predominantly around supporting families where there's been domestic abuse. That can include sexual abuse, but our kind of forte is the domestic abuse area. There's lots and lots of different things that we offer to all groups within the city. So the best way of kind of looking into that in a bit more detail is via our website, and you'll have the website and contact numbers at the end of these slides available to you. That's also how you refer in as well, is via our website, or if you have any problems with completing the forms, you can call in as well. That's just a little quote on there from somebody that completed one of our programs as well. So CAPVA then. So some of you may or may not have heard of it, but essentially what the definition is child and adolescent parent violence and abuse. And it refers to a pattern of behaviour. So it's not just sort of kind of your one-off or standard boundary pushing, which we get from children and adolescents, but it's actually a pattern of harmful and in some cases can be controlling behaviour by children or adolescents, and it's particularly targeting parents or caregivers. And siblings as well. And it can be physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, financial, property-based or sexual. We don't see as much of the sexual side of abuse, but it absolutely can be present. And it's an intentional act as well. So it's intended to cause physical, psychological or financial damage. So it's really similar in terms of intimate domestic abuse, where the kind of purpose is to kind of gain control, but there's a few differences which we'll look at. There also hasn't been a lot of research undertaken into CAPVA either. So the kind of predominant research that has been done has been in Australia. It's not even been in the UK. So although CAPVA isn't new, it's been something that's been going on for many, many years. In terms of the research and support available, it is. So yeah, that's where we come in. So as I said, it's similar to the intimate partner abuse. The definition includes 16 years plus in the legal definition, but there's a different power and control dynamic slightly. So for child to parent abuse, it's more that the kind of parent role, sorry, this is really annoying me. The parental role has been, there's an imbalance. So parents feel that they've lost control over their child or young person, and that actually the child has become the kind of one that's enforcing the kind of how the daily runnings of the household. They're in control of how things are going. It's really difficult to put boundaries in place with these children, to enforce anything in the home, and it almost becomes that the parents are actually quite scared So there's a risk element there. They're worried about acting within their parental role because of the repercussions of that. So there's been a flip, there's been a role reversal within the home. But the complicated thing with CAPFA is that with intimate partner abuse, a lot of the time the support is around leaving that relationship in order to get safety and to minimize risk and to live a life free of abuse. Not everybody leaves, but a lot of people do eventually. But with CAPFA, the dynamic is different in that parents and caregivers, they don't necessarily want to, cut their child off or separate themselves from their child, or even have to, call the police on their child. So the kind of bond is different, and the way that we support it has to be different. And that's why we look more around, okay, so what can we do to reduce the risk of harm and the risk of abuse by keeping the family together? What is it that we can do with that? And it's more of a restorative sort of trauma informed approach that we take with it. The good thing about it is the abusive behaviours may not be so entrenched, because we're looking at children and young people here. They're younger. So we've got a little bit more kind of able to get in there early, so that early intervention, and try and repair that. So that's good. Like I said, best dealt with in a restorative way, so in a non-criminalizing way, although we know, especially for some of our families, that they have had to involve the criminal justice system. They have had to call the police to keep themselves safe as well. Mothers, similarly to intimate abuse, so women are much more likely to be the victims here, and particularly single mothers. They're disproportionately affected, and it's very much a growing social problem. So particularly it was highlighted during lockdown as well, the prevalence of it, and it really was increasing. So when is it not CAPFA? So when is it not child, adolescent, parent violence and abuse? I touched upon this at the very beginning, but we know that with children and particularly adults, there is going to be boundary pushing. Children aren't going to just get on with it and listen to what you say. And we know from one day to the next, it might not be so smooth. It's not a one-off explosive incident. So some children may act very, very abusively here and there. But this is actually, the core is about gaining that power and control. And it's when parents do not need to change their parenting to avoid the abusive incident. So if you find that this is happening regularly, it's a pattern, you're changing the way that you are, and you're fearful, and that risk is escalating over time, then pretty much you could be quite self-assured that this is CAPFA. I've got a little diagram here. I'm not going to read every one of them out to you because it'd be very boring, but you can find this online. There's different variations of these wheels. And this is particularly for abusive family members. So when it's children and adolescents, and there's lots of different ways that children and adolescents will abuse, as I said earlier. But the kind of main criteria of it is using abuse to get their own way. There can be physical abuse, and that can be really high risk, and particularly as children, adolescents get older, boys are more likely to be the perpetrator of this abuse as well. And I have had a lot of mothers saying, I am really scared that they could kill me. I'm really, really fearful, or they could, they've broken my arm, or have had to go into hospital, have had bruising, they've hurt their siblings. So it can be really high risk. It could be violating trust of family members. So violating the rules, leaving the home without saying where they're going, generally just kind of disrespecting any rules that are in place. Emotional abuse, so we get a lot of swearing, shouting, name calling, put downs, insulting, ignoring. Threats and intimidating behaviour, destroying things around the house or property or things that are of value, or stealing. Denying, justifying, minimizing, and blaming. So again, similar to intimate partner abuse, the abusive person is unlikely to say, yep, that was me, I take responsibility for it, I know I've done wrong. It's a lot of kind of passing the blame. Making very unreasonable demands, that could be or things that they expect you to do, or having money given to them. And yeah, they're just a few things. They're not exhaustive. There will be there will be more, and these don't necessarily apply to everybody, but if you can highlight even a few things on here, then it's kind of suggesting that there is an issue going on. And I know that we have found with a lot of our families that it's not just a couple of things they're highlighting on this. When we give it to them, it is quite an exhaustive list. And we show them the opposite of this wheel as well. So it's kind of like the healthy, equal, functioning sort of family, and they say yes, some things will be present, so not all days are terrible days, but actually what they're finding is that's few and far between, and they're seeing more of the abuse side of things than anything else. I've got a little clip here, but what will happen is if I press play on this, it is going to, the slide will, I don't know what it's doing, but it seems to be on some sort of timer. So I think it would be good for you to watch it, but I think I'll need to pop it into my browser rather than showing it to you on the slide. So is it okay if we do that maybe at the end? I'm thinking.
That's fine. Yeah, no worries.
Otherwise, we'll get 20 seconds in and it'll just go on to the next slide, which would be really annoying. But basically, this is just an account of a woman who's, I think it was her daughter actually, that was acting really, really abusively in the home. And it was during lockdown, and she just gave an account. And I think it's quite good for families to see. So just a summary then of kind of the impact on the family. So we know it doesn't just stop at parents and caregivers. It affects the young person himself as well, and it affects siblings. So it's, you know, it's like a domino effect, really. So these are just a few things. So you've got your physical health, your emotional health, the impact on property and finances, the impact on relationships. So not just in the home, but wider as well. So it could be that you're really isolated in the end. You're too scared to kind of go out and engage with other people or take your child out with you, or your mental health might be impacted to the point where it's like, actually, do you know what? I don't have the energy for this anymore. So yeah, not only just within the home, but for them also outside of the home, it could impact school and education. So lots of different things to consider. You've got your legal consequences for those families that do need to get sort of police involvement and things like that. So that could lead to the young person being arrested, having legal orders put in place, being convicted, which is what, you know, something we really, really don't want to have to happen. And also for parents as well. So for a lot of our children, they're not going to school, or they're acting up at school as well. They're running away from school. So again, for parents, you might have to be paying fines, being called into meetings, all sorts of things. And I spoke about the social contact as well, so being limited as well, so maybe needing to stay home, having a lack of freedom and movement. Siblings might be avoiding the home. So lots of things to consider that are really detrimental actually in the grand scheme of things, and can be really long lasting there as well. So just a little bit about why CAPFA happens. So I said there's not been a huge amount of research into it, but what we have found is there's been a variety of things, and it might not just be one thing, and they can overlap as well. So you've got your neurodiversity. So we have a lot of children and young people where they have diagnosis of autism, ADHD, Asperger's, mental health issues, or they're waiting assessment. So that's something that we're seeing more frequently than not. Developmental trauma as well. So that could be a result of things like what we'd call adverse childhood experiences. So that might be domestic abuse, which we've got on there already. It could be drug and alcohol misuse in the home, mental health issues going on within the home, bereavement, incarceration of a primary caregiver, loss of a loved one. Do I say that? So all of those things can cause developmental trauma throughout childhood, or in really early years, or even pre-birth as well. So there's quite a lot of research that's coming through on that, and that can cause CAPFA to happen. So loss and trauma. So again, you kind of got your overlap going there. The availability of a consistent parent. So it might be that actually parents have additional needs or diverse needs. So their parenting hasn't always been consistent. If there's domestic abuse, it might be that a parent has, left the home, they're not having regular contact, might be that they've gone to prison. So there could be a lot of inconsistency within that home. And what we find when there is trauma is that there's usually quite a few of those things. So it's not just one thing. So particularly of domestic abuse, we find that there's mental health issues as well. There might be substance misuse to kind of cope with that. And it's from one day to the next, you don't kind of know what you're going to get within that home. So you might have periods of stability where things are okay, but then the next day it could change. With domestic abuse, you've got one person that's got all the power and all the control. So the ball's in their court, really. They will dictate when it's a good day and when it's not. So all of those things can cause child, adolescent, parent violence and abuse to happen. Not always, it's not a one size fits all, but these tend to be the kind of things that we're seeing a lot within our families, and this is what research has found as well. So our Building Respectful Families course, so as I said, this is relatively new. Please ignore the dates on this. I've just used it as it's our flyer. But it's a 10-week group program, and it works with both parents or primary caregiver and their child. And the way that we do that is we run it at the same time at our office, but separately. So children are separate in their group, covering what they cover, and then adults are covering what they cover in their own group. And then at the end of the session, we have time where children and parents come together and we have a family-based activity. We didn't have that at the beginning. That's something that we changed, but we felt it was actually really important because actually the point of the course is to try and rebuild the bond and to minimize abusive behaviors, to improve communication with one another, and to help repair that relationship. So actually we thought it was really important to give that time. And we know as well, day to day, particularly where there's CAPFA going on and there's lots of responsibilities and lots of things, each week that you have to do, it can be really difficult to get that time individually with your child. Sometimes you don't even want to have that time individually with your child when they're acting that way. So there's an avoidance going on there as well. But because we're giving parents skills to improve that, we thought it was quite a nice way of kind of being able to utilize those skills in a more controlled and safe setting. We found that has actually worked quite well. There's been a bit of resistance from the children sometimes, I'm not doing that, but usually they do get on with it, and it's been quite a positive actually. So we cover slightly different things in both groups, but similar. So with the parents, it's more informative and educational and skill-based. So we look at, why CAPFA happens, what that's about. We look at trauma in more detail and the impact of that. We look at influences on parenting, what's positive, maybe what's not so positive, how we can change our parenting. What else do we look at? There's so many things. We look at those wills in more details as well. We look at, what skills you can put in place at home to improve communication, because actually a lot of the kind of abuse that we get from our children can be reduced by working on that communication. We look at psychological approaches to things, so kind of changing our mindset, changing the way we think about things, looking at more what's underneath the surface of our behavior and our children's behavior as well. We look at attachment theory and how that comes into play. So it's very educational. It's not a counselling based group, it's more of a learning experience, but we do find that the parents learn from one another as well, so it's very good in that sense. With the children, it's not therapeutic because we're not trained counsellors, but it's more of a kind of a therapeutic approach to what they do. So they would never be expected to speak of their own experiences or ask any direct questions that may trigger them or upset them, but they will look at things like how to manage their emotions better, how to communicate better, how to be able to see things from their parents' point of view, what's acceptable and what's unacceptable with behaviour. What can you do when you're feeling really angry? You know, what is it that you would like to discuss with your parent or primary caregiver? How can we manage that better? So some of what they look at is similar to what we do, but it's just done in a different way. And so far that's worked pretty well. The facilitators are really good at managing the children, young people as well. A lot of parents are quite worried about how that might go, because they think the children might sort of kick off or just not engage or just not want to be there. But actually, I think we've been quite fortunate with the groups that we have had, and they've engaged pretty well so far. That's how it works. It's for 2 hours a week at our office on Brickvale Road in Portswood, and it's for 10 weeks. And usually we break for the children's school holidays as well to make it accessible for parents to get to. With this, you refer on our website as well, or by calling in if you feel like it would be beneficial for you. So here's some useful numbers and sites, but I can send them over to you, Jill, and then you can pop them out to everybody so they know how to get in touch with us and things like that. There's a couple of websites on there as well, which I think are just good if you want to know more about CAPVA as an issue. So when I was putting these slides together, and when we've been putting our workshops together, we've had a look at the CAPVA and Respect website on there, the Family Lives. There's some literature you can look at as well, holes on the wall. So they're not services, but they're just really useful. They can help you to just understand a little bit more. And I think the more you do understand about the issue and about the behaviour, the kind of easier it is to manage it, but also to feel a bit of comfort in it, that you're not alone in this. This is something that is ongoing for lots and lots of families, and there is support out there. I know for a lot of our families, they have said that actually just knowing that other families are going through it has been really important for them and their journey forward. It feel quite isolating. With the Building Respectful Families course as well, you've noticed you've got the Southampton Family Trust logo on these slides. They run it with us, so it's us and them. So Southampton Family Trust, you may have heard of them. They're a fantastic charity as well. So they do lots of different sort of workshops and relationship-based work, some with families, some with couples. So they're a bit different to us because they don't specialise in domestic and sexual abuse, but they've got great expertise, and they tend to work with the children and young people, and Yellow Door tend to do more of the adult and the parenting work, but then we join forces at the end to do those family sessions together. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a moment and just get that video up for you just to have a little look at.
Okay.
All right. And if you have any questions, I know there's only Laura and Karen, but Jill as well. If you do have any questions, just fire away whilst I just sort this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura and Karen, if you want to write anything in the chat box or turn your mics off and ask a question, that's fine.
Bit of a big topic, so
yeah. Do you run anything, I saw it's for 10 to 14-year-olds, do you run anything for sort of that 14 to 16, 17 age range?
I think our new funding actually goes up to 16 years now. I feel that it might do. Don't quote me on that. I will double check it, but I think it might be 10 to 16. We don't get a lot of referrals over the age of 13, 14. I feel that might be to do with engagement. Maybe, I'm not sure whether parents think that it'd be too difficult to get this sort of 16-year-old to come along to that sort of thing. But also, if we did receive referrals for the older age group, we'd have to look at how we would manage that, because a 10-year-old in with a 16-year-old, I'm not too sure how that would work. But again, it's something that we could certainly manage if depending on the referrals we get, but we tend to get more so 10 to 13, okay. 10 to 14 at the moment.
Is there any sort of advice out there for families whose young people are that sort of older age and won't engage? Because we seem to have an increasing number of families with, it is the 16, 17-year-olds who are really,
yeah,
showing that they will not engage with any other services, but the parents are left just feeling really helpless.
Yeah, no, certainly. Parents can still engage with this. So with the Building Respectful Families, we would work with parents on their own. So that would be absolutely fine. We wouldn't work with a child on their own, because that would be pointless. So parents can still engage. I know that No Limits is a very good charity for younger people of that age as well. I'm not sure if they do anything specifically around this, but it might be just the case that actually you encourage a young person to get their own support around it. It's really difficult that age, and then the parent kind of just has to do what they need to do in terms of their own support there.
Okay, that's good to know. They can come to you for some sort of advice and stuff. In fact, I've got a family at the moment who's, over the weekend, we're in touch about, exactly this, but I know their young person's not willing to engage. So it's great that I can direct them to you for some further support.
No, definitely. I think, to be honest, with the program, I think the more pivotal work is done with the parents. I think the children do get a lot out of it, and certainly there are improvements. There have been so far with our families, and we're halfway through. So children's behaviour has improved, thankfully. But I think the parents are kind of the ones that are required to put in what we teach at home in order to kind of see that difference. So I think that's the most important part, is getting parents engaged with it. And if the children come with that, then that's fantastic, because you've got both there and you've got that holistic approach. But if not, at least you've got one. Is that if over 14? Yeah.
What about, I see Karen's sort of asking if they're under 10, is that something that you can still support with?
Yeah, so with it depends on your experiences, but Yellow Door do family therapy as well. So again, it's a little bit different. It's not a course, but it's therapeutic counselling for families where there's been domestic or sexual abuse, or both. There are also other therapeutic services in Yellow Door that work with younger children. Southampton Family Trust may offer support for children that are younger as well. I'm not sure on all of their courses because they're different to us, but any of this you'll be able to find on the website as well. But there is support available for the younger ones, but it's done differently. So that course, the BRF, would not be suitable for a 7-year-old to kind of be able to take in that information. It just wouldn't be. I think you'd have to support them a little bit differently, and that's where I think that therapeutic style work is more beneficial for them. So ACEs is a program that is similar to BRF in that it works with both parent and child and young person. But it's not specifically designed for children and young people that are acting abusively. It's kind of more of a get in there before that behavior starts happening. And the program's designed for families where there's been trauma. So domestic abuse will be one of the criterias, but what we know with domestic abuse is again, it can come hand in hand with substance misuse, mental health issues, loss, bereavement, incarceration, which are all of the things that can cause trauma. So ACEs covers all adverse childhood experiences, including domestic abuse. And again, children do come at the same time as parents, but they're supported differently, and the subject and the material is different in which we deliver, because it's not just for children that are acting abusively. But it's from 10 to 16 years, our ACEs course, and that's something that might be beneficial for families as well. So maybe it's not quite a pattern of abusive behavior going on in the home, but you want some support with those traumas. They can't be ongoing traumas, so we don't work with anyone where domestic abuse is still happening, because that's a different type of support and it'd be unsafe. Ours is more recovery based, psychoeducational and trauma informed work after the trauma has happened.
Victoria, do you have any I know this is a really simplistic question, but any quick tips for sort of de-escalating things in the home when things are, becoming increasingly fraught and maybe violent? Are there any quick things that parents can sort of take away from this video that they could do while they're sort of waiting for referrals and to get onto courses? Or is that too simplistic a question?
It's not too simplistic. I think the difficulty is we'd need to know a little bit more about, for each family it will be different, and for each child it will be different as well. My advice is, if you feel at risk, So if you feel like you could be really hurt, or it could really escalate, then you need to remove yourself from that situation. We get a lot of parents where it escalates because of the communication. So parents are trying to sort of come in quite strong, which I get. I'm trying to enforce those boundaries, and trying to, stop it. But what can happen then is, if you're coming in aggressive, they're going to become more aggressive. So I think before you've got that kind of support in place, then you need to be kind of thinking about picking your battles with it. A lot of children, it's the iceberg theory, which some of you may know. So there's a lot going on under the surface here, and you're only seeing a fraction of it. And although that can be really, really difficult to manage, and it really is, actually it's about just figuring out what's going on here. If I remove myself from this for a bit and let this die down, can then we have a conversation about this? Do I have to be dealing with it right here and now? Although parents don't like to do this, or don't like hearing this, if you're at risk, or your child's at risk of real serious harm, you do need to be calling the police, because we don't want anybody ending up seriously, injured or hurt.
Yeah, I think often we've got families calling the police, and the police just, they're so overstretched, they're not getting to them as a priority, and I think they then feel really stuck on what to do.
We have had that happen as well, unfortunately. We've had some families where they're like, no, we've had a really good response. It's then enabled us to get more support in place. They've been understanding. And then with every good, you get actually. So with the police, they can either onward refer, they can take, remove from the home and take away, but there's only so long you can take a child away from the home. And a lot of families don't want to push it any further. They don't want to take up anything else. They don't want to, press charges on their child. But so I think it's just kind of managing expectations around what services can do. But I think if you're at risk, if it's at that point, then we have to say that, it's really, really important. Your safety is paramount, and so is your child's safety. But I think without speaking to families individually about what's going on, it's hard to safety plan around it. But I think just picking battles, seeking support, thinking about communication, and if things are, escalating, removing yourself from that, giving it some time, and then coming back to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
That's all right. Any other questions or anything?
Nothing that's come up so far.
No. Okay. No. But yeah, the best thing I can say is having a look at our website. I will send what I'll do is I'll send that link out, that Good Morning Britain link, instead of watching it here. Okay, I'll send that link out. I'll send all the links out for our website. I'll send the PIPA telephone number as well, which is the Domestic and Sexual Abuse Hub in Southampton. So you can get any advice that you need from there too, if you're just wanting to have a chat, and PIPA can signpost you on. But if it's definitely that you need, like the BRF program or ACEs, anything you meet criteria, then you can just go straight through the Yellow Door website and refer on to that as well.
That's brilliant. That's been so helpful, and it's so nice to hear that there is support out there. We've been hearing about this for a really long time, so to now have somewhere we can sort of signpost families to get that advice and support is amazing. So thank you ever so much for telling us about it. Really appreciate your time.
That's okay. It's been really nice coming along, and I wish you all the best, and I may see some of you in the future.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. I'll send that to you now. Those bits and pieces. All right, take care.